Good day, students, and I am Miss JV Armenta, your teacher in oral communication and context, and now I will discuss the first lesson in this subject, which is the elements and process of communication. Okay, let's present the learning objectives of this lesson. We have first define the communication. The second one is demonstrate sensitivity toward others in various communication situations. And lastly, explain the nature, elements, and process of communication. So you need to remember this learning objective so that after our discussion, you will be able to know if you already can define what is communication, you can already demonstrate sensitivity toward others in various communication situations. And lastly, if you can explain the nature, elements, and process of communication. Okay, let's proceed to the discussion proper that we have. First, let us know what is communication. Okay, communication, it is a process of sharing and conveying messages or information from one person to another within and across channels, contexts, media, and culture. Okay, in communication, it is about messaging, sending message, sharing messages, or conveying messages to another person. It is not about one person to another person. Okay, communication or conversation between one person to a small group of people or even a larger number of people is also considered as communication. Okay, next we have the definition from hosting and stated from Tandok. According to them, communication is the way interpersonal connections are created, enhanced, maintained, and destroyed. It means that in communication, they define it as an interpersonal connection or interpersonal communication. What is interpersonal connection? It means that you are talking with someone, you are talking to someone that you have the same interest, okay, so or the same beliefs in life. Okay, so that's for the communication definition by hosting and stated by Tandok. Let's proceed to the next. Okay, after knowing what is communication, okay, I will add to the definition of communication. Okay, where does the communication word came from? Okay, it is came from the Latin word communicare or communicare. It means to share or sharing. Again, communication word came from the Latin word communicare or communicare, that means to share or sharing. Okay, so again, that's all for the definition of communication. And now let's proceed to the nature of communication. What is nature of communication? Nature of communication, it means that this is the basic concept, basic characteristic of communication. Okay, number one is communication is a dynamic process. Miss JV, what is dynamic process or dynamic? Dynamic, it means that it is constantly changing. Okay, it means that in communication, it is always changing. Now, we are experiencing online communication, but when the COVID-19 um, was is gone will be gone, we will have physical communication. So that was an example on how communication is a dynamic process. It is always changing every day. Okay, the next nature is in communication, messages are sent, not meanings. Okay, in this nature of communication, we always giving messages or sending messages to a specific person without telling the meaning of that message, because the receiver, it is up to them on how to interpret or on how to give meaning in that specific message. Okay, so that is the second nature of communication. The third nature of communication is communication occurs between two or more people. Okay, like what I've said earlier, communication is not only about having conversation with another person. Okay, in communication, it is about sharing, having conversation or sending messages to a specific person or a group of people, even in a larger number of people or audience. Okay, so it is also considered as communication. Number four is that communication can be expressed through words, which is verbal, in action, which is non-verbal, or both at the same time. Okay, in communication, we can use verbal, or we can encode, we can share or send message in through words. Okay, and in through the use of messenger, you are typing your message to a specific person, or in gestures or in action. It could be facial expression, movements of your body. Okay, so that that was communication to be expressed. Okay, so lastly, in communication, context should be given emphasis, because context, it is the environment or the communication situation, the culture, as well as the relationship of the receiver to the sender. Okay, in this last nature of communication, we need to give emphasis to the context. Okay, context, it is the situation where the communication takes place. Okay, so the context that we have is online class, online learning. So that me as your teacher, I need to deliver a quality education for you to learn this pandemic season, and you as a student, you will be able to learn from me, and you need to listen and follow my instructions as your teacher. So that will be our context. Okay, so next, after the nature of communication, we have the importance of communication. Okay, why we need to communicate? Why do we need to communicate with other people? First, communication is message understood. Okay, and this importance of communication, you have to remember two terms. First term is that message should be clear. Okay, the second term is that because the message is clear, the message should be understood. Okay, that's why it is communication is message understood, because sometimes we will able to, there are possibilities that we want to send or we want to share a message, but it is not clear. That's why we can experience a miscommunication, misunderstanding between two people. So that it is very important for us to communicate or to send message, but we need to make or create a clear message before sending it to the receiver. Okay, so that's for the first importance of communication. And lastly, communication is social interaction through messages. Okay, and communication is social interaction through messages. Through messages, it means that in communication, it is important to communicate because it will build social interaction, social relationship with other people. Without social interaction, we can build friendship with our friends, right? Without social interaction, we can't buy the things that we want. Okay, so if you want to buy a spaghetti, you can't get it without paying that groceries in the cashier. Okay, without social interaction, so it is very important for us to have social interaction to build the relationship and to build conversation or communication with other people. Okay, so that's for importance of communication. Okay, let's proceed to the next. Next is the elements of communication. Okay, after knowing the definition of communication, after knowing the nature, the basic concept, and basic characteristic of nature of communication rather, and the importance, why do we need to communicate, let's have the elements of communication. Okay, in elements of communication, we have 9 elements. First is the speaker. The speaker, she or he is the source of information or message. Okay, it means that I am the speaker because I want to send a message to you regarding the nature and elements and process of communication. Okay, so the next element is message. Okay, message, it is the information, ideas, or thoughts conveyed by the speaker in words of or in action. Okay, message, it could be ideas, concept, feelings that you are feeling. Okay, so the message, we need to generate it. Okay, it could be about the topic that we have, it could be about the story of your life. Okay, so that was an example of message. Okay, let's proceed to the third element. Third element is the encoding. Okay, in encoding, it is the process of converting the message into words, actions, or other forms that the speaker understand. Okay, in encoding, it is the process of converting the message into words, action. Okay, so I am the speaker and I have the message, and it is about the elements and process of communication, so that I want to encode, or I need to encode that into words, into handouts, diba? And also I can encode it in the gestures, what I'm doing right now, because I don't want to teach my students like this. Okay, students, this will be your quiz for today. Okay, so it is more enjoyable or more interactive if your teacher has the energy to teach you. Okay, by using gestures, facial expression, and also proper discussion. Okay, and that's for the encoding. And also the person who is responsible to do the encoding is the speaker. Next element is channel. Okay, the channel, it is the medium, the means such as personal or non-personal, verbal or non-verbal, in which the encoded message is conveyed. Channel, it is the medium that we are using for us to send message. Okay, the channel that we have right now is Google Meet, okay, Messenger, Facebook, Google Classroom as well, because we have a new normal education. But when COVID-19, if the COVID-19 will be gone in a few months, we will have physical classes. So it means that we have personal channel, okay, through verbal and non-verbal communication. Okay, but for now, we will using computer, tablet, cell phone, Google Meet, Google Classroom, Google Mail, Messenger, and Facebook. So that's for an example of channel. Okay, next element is decoding. Okay, decoding, it is the process of interpreting the encoded message of the speaker by the receiver. Okay, in decoding, you need to remember the difference between encoding and decoding. The encoding is about converting the message into words or into action, while the decoding, it is the process of interpreting the encoded message. Okay, after the receiver received the message, she needs to interpret it. Okay, that's why message, in nature of communication, message only sent but not the meanings. Okay, so the receiver is the responsible on how to decode the message, or giving the meaning of that message, or interpreting that message. Okay, so next we have receiver. Okay, receiver, it is the recipient of the message, or someone who decodes the message. Of course, the receiver is you as my students. Okay, and next, feedback. Feedback, this is the reactions or responses of the receiver. Okay, Miss JV, feedback. In feedback, do we need to give feedback, positive feedback only? No, it is either negative or positive feedback. You can do that as long as it is a response or a reaction from that message. Okay, so next. Next, we have the last two elements, which are the context and the barrier. Okay, context, like what I've said earlier, it is the environment or the situation where the communication takes place. Okay, so again, we have context of online classes. So in context like that, you need to respect me even though we are experiencing online classes. Okay, and also example of that, because you know that your mother is your mother, of course you know the context, 'Di ba? Hindi pwedeng gagawin mong tropa-tropa yung mama mo kasi kahit alam mo na yung context. Okay, that's why it is very important for us to know the context that we have in communication for us to be able to be an effective communicator with inside the communication, inside the conversation. And lastly, we have barrier. In barrier, these are the factors that affect the flow of communication. Barrier, some example of barrier is physical noise, environmental noise, language barrier, cultural barrier, and many more. Okay, so the barrier, it is the factor that stops us to have a good communication or effective communication, perfect communication. Okay, so this is the a bad it could be a internet interruption, it could be a physical noises or the background noises. Okay, so these are the examples of the barrier. Okay, and that's all for the elements of communication. We have 9 elements: the speaker, the message, encoding, channel, decoding, the receiver, the feedback, and last two, the context and the barrier. Okay, and now after knowing what is communication, the basic concept of communication, and why we need to communicate, and the 9 elements of communication, now we can proceed to the process of communication. Okay, in process of communication, we can use this for us to have step by step procedure, okay, on how to communicate or on how to have effective communication with other people. First step is that the speaker generates an idea. Okay, so as a speaker, you are responsible to generate your own idea. Okay, the second one, after generating your idea, me as a speaker, I am generating the idea. I have generated an idea. Okay, and the idea or the message that I want to present to you is the elements and process of communication. After generating that idea, I need to encode it. The speaker encodes the idea into words or action. Okay, I already encoded the elements and process of communication into handout, into PowerPoint, and into action like this. Okay, into words like this that I am discussing it today. Okay, so next, we have the speaker transmit or sends out the message. Of course, after encoding the message through words and into action, into handout, and into PowerPoint, I already transmit it or send it to you as my students. Okay, so as I receive the message, the receiver gets the message. Of course, after sending the message, you will be able to receive it. Okay? And next, the receiver decodes or interprets the message based on the context. Okay, because you already receive the message that I already sent to you, you will be able to decode or interpret or give meaning to that specific message. Okay, if you are a good receiver or effective receiver, hindi mo lang masasabi na, ay, Miss JV taught us about elements and process of communication because after that we will have a quiz. You are not good receiver in in that part. Okay, if you are a good and effective receiver, effective communicator, you will interpret my message as, okay, Miss JV taught us about elements and process of communication because she wants us to be an effective communicator in the future, especially when we go to college, and especially to if we have if we will be professionals. Okay, so in this lesson I learned that it is very important to communicate and to have a good communication with other people. Okay, so that will be your interpretation if you are an effective or a good receiver of my message. And lastly, the receiver sends or provides message. Okay, in our context, I will let you give feedback in terms of having quiz, giving you a quiz, asking some question about takeaways, about your alpha and delta, the things that you learned and the things that you think you need more to practice. Okay, so that will be the process of communication. We have 6 steps on how to have good communication through the process of communication. Again, let's do a recap. Okay, communication, it is about sharing or sending sending messages from one person to another, but you can but communication is also about sending message from one person to a larger number of people. Okay, so the nature of communication, it is the basic concepts of communication, that communication is constantly changing. In communication, message sent, not the meanings. Okay, so those are some example of some of the nature of communication and the importance. Communication message should be understood, and in communication, it is communication in social interaction through message. Okay, and we have 9 elements of communication, and we have 6 steps, or one by one procedure of the process of communication. Okay, so that's all, students, for the first lesson that we have about elements and process of communication. So thank you for listening. I hope you learned something about our discussion, that you will be able to apply it in the future or even in present time. Okay, God bless, thank you, keep safe, and bye. Again, I am Miss JV Armenta, your oral communication and in context teacher. Goodbye.